Turns out throwing rocks is still a solid strategy when you're desperate enough. Captain Nolan sat in the command chair of the UNS Resolute, staring at the tactical display. Red markers, each representing one of the enemy's massive warships, filled the screen like a crimson tide. The Zorian Armada had been the terror of the galaxy for centuries, wiping out entire civilizations with their planet-cracking superweapons. The humans, newcomers to the galactic stage, were just another name on their list, or so the Zorian thought. "What do we have left?" Nolan asked. His voice carried an edge, though not of despair. There wasn't time for despair. Lieutenant Parker, his second in command, scanned the inventory. "Nothing worth mentioning, sir. We've burned through all the railgun ammunition, the missile stocks are gone, and the energy cores on our laser arrays are dead. Shields are holding at 3%, but that's generous." "Great," Nolan muttered. "So we got a handful of pebbles and a prayer." Actually, a gravelly voice interjected, "We've got rocks. Lots of them." Sergeant Torres, a grizzled veteran of Earth's terrestrial wars, stood by the viewport, gesturing at the asteroid field surrounding their beleaguered fleet. The Resolute wasn't alone. A dozen human ships, battered and barely holding together, drifted among the space debris. "Are you suggesting we throw asteroids at the Zorian?" Parker asked, incredulous. "Why not? They're big, heavy, and free," Torres said, shrugging. "We've got enough tractor beams to sling them, and those fancy shields of theirs weren't built to handle kinetic impacts. They were designed to deflect energy weapons, not, well, rocks." Nolan leaned forward, his mind racing. "We can't take out their whole fleet with that, but if we concentrate our fire, we might punch through their main ship," Torres finished. "And if we take out the head, the body might follow." Nolan nodded. It was a long shot, but humanity had thrived on long shots since the first caveman picked up a stick. "Get every engineer, pilot, and gunner ready. Strip down non-essential systems and power up the tractor beams. We're about to make history again." Within minutes, the fleet buzzed with activity. Engineers scrambled to repurpose anything that still worked into improvised catapults. Massive asteroids, some the size of city blocks, were drawn into position. The crews, exhausted but driven, followed orders with a mix of fear and grim humor. Torres wandered over to Nolan. "Reminds me of the old stories," he said. "David and Goliath, slingshots against giants." "Except Goliath has enough firepower to vaporize a planet," Nolan replied. "But yeah, the principle's the same." The Zorian flagship loomed on the tactical display, a hulking behemoth bristling with weapons. It was flanked by its fleet, each ship a masterpiece of destruction. They had humanity cornered, and they knew it. Their comms channels flooded with mocking broadcasts, taunting the primitive species they were about to annihilate. Nolan tapped a button on his console, patching into the fleet-wide channel. "This is it, gentlemen. We've faced extinction before, and we've always come out swinging. Today's no different. Let's show these aliens why humans are the worst species to pick a fight with." Cheers erupted through the comms. It wasn't the sound of soldiers who believed they would live, but the sound of men who refused to die without a fight. The Zorian ships advanced, their planet crackers charging. Blue energy built in massive arrays along their hulls, preparing to unleash destruction on a scale unimaginable. Nolan watched the countdown timers with icy focus. The humans couldn't afford to let those weapons fire. "On my mark, launch the first volley," he ordered. The tractor beams hummed to life. Massive chunks of rocks shot forward, accelerating toward the enemy fleet. The Zorian barely registered the incoming projectiles. To them, it was laughable. Then the first asteroid hit. The kinetic force was catastrophic. One of the smaller Zorian destroyers, built for agility rather than armor, disintegrated on impact. Shards of its hull spun out, colliding with nearby ships and causing secondary explosions. The fleet faltered, momentarily stunned. "Direct hit," Parker shouted. "They're scrambling," Nolan said. "Good. Now hit them again." More asteroids followed, each one guided with precision. The humans didn't have the luxury of overwhelming firepower, so they aimed for weak points. The seams between shield generators, exposed weapon ports, and engine clusters. One by one, Zorian ships faltered, their elegant designs proving fragile under brute force. The flagship, however, remained unscathed. Its shields absorbed smaller impacts, and its massive frame shrugged off glancing blows. It moved forward relentlessly, targeting the Resolute. "Captain, they're locking onto us," Parker warned. "Let them," Nolan said. "Torres, are we ready for the big one?" Torres grinned. "Locked and loaded, Captain. The biggest rock in the field, ready to go." The asteroid in question was a monstrosity, nearly half the size of the Resolute itself. It had taken every tractor beam the fleet could muster to position it, and its trajectory was calculated to the millimeter. If it hit, it would obliterate the Zorian flagship, or miss entirely. "Fire," Nolan ordered. The asteroid lurched forward, accelerating faster than seemed possible. The Zorian flagship attempted to evade, its massive engines straining to shift its bulk, but the rock was too large, its speed too great. It slammed into the ship with the force of 1,000 nuclear detonations. The flagship's shields flared and failed. The impact tore through its hull, rupturing decks and igniting fuel reserves. Explosions cascaded along its length. For the first time, the Zorian armada hesitated. "They're pulling back," Parker exclaimed. "Not fast enough," Torres said, already preparing the next volley. Nolan allowed himself a small smile. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. But for the first time, victory seemed possible. The Zorian fleet was reeling, but Nolan knew better than to celebrate early. These weren't amateurs. They were one of the most advanced military forces in the galaxy, and they didn't stay on top by running scared at the first sign of resistance. The flagship might have been crippled, but the rest of the fleet was regrouping. Their sleek, angular warships shifted into a defensive formation, layering their shield systems to compensate for the unexpected vulnerability to physical projectiles. "They're adapting," Parker said grimly, watching the display as the Zorian ships repositioned. "That's what I'd do," Nolan replied. "But they're not expecting what comes next." "Torres, status on the surprise package." Torres turned from his station, his grin as feral as ever. "Locked, loaded, and ready for delivery. Just say the word." The surprise package was an improvised device born of desperation and ingenuity.